Enormous mega-tsunami could drown the UK and the US coasts when the Canary Islands volcano erupts. Well, we know that on the west coast of Africa, south of Europe, we have a series of islands which are volcanic islands, and they are active. And when they blow, they could very well create a volcano tsunami. It's these Canary Islands volcanoes that cause threats of tsunamis. Experts say the enormous mega-tsunamis could drown UK and US coasts when they erupt. This is by Freddie Jordan on Express. One of the world's foremost volcanologists warns that if a very active volcano on the Canary Islands, Las Palmas for example, is the next to blow, the coasts of Europe, the UK, and the USA across the pond, that is, across the Atlantic Ocean, could be devastated by huge mega-tsunami waves. Professor Stephen Sparks is based at the University of Bristol, and he made the revelation about the Cumbre Vieja, a very active volcano on the island of La Palma, adjacent to the popular holiday destination of the island of Tenerife. And he explains that when you have volcanic islands sticking out of the sea, they're very unstable. And in some cases, you can get gigantic landslides when part of the island essentially collapses into the sea. You can get tsunamis from that, and they're quite significant. In neighboring islands, they could be enormous. It's quite difficult to know how dramatic these tsunamis would be around the Atlantic Ocean, on the east coast of the USA, or in Europe. I mean, they could be quite significant, he says. And he goes on to explain why it's difficult to know what's difficult to know is if you have a bath and you create a wave by pushing the water from one end of the bath to the other with your hand. If you push it quickly, you're going to get a larger wave than if you push it slowly. So the problem is we don't really know enough about how rapidly these islands collapse into the sea. If they collapse relatively slowly, then you won't get a big wave. But if they collapse very fast, then maybe you do get a really big wave. Kumbre Vieja means old summit in Spanish. It's erupted twice in living memory, and quite recently, the last time. The first was in recent memory is 1949, and then 1971. And over the past 12 months, there have been well over 1,000 recorded earthquakes on the island, 928 of them in just 1 week. A large eruption could mean the island ceases to exist along with the swaths of southern English coast. Scientists say, for example, Indonesia's Anak Krakatau volcano island, you remember that erupted recently, sending a tsunami across because part of that volcano, the Anak Krakatau, meaning the child of Krakatau, slid into the sea, creating a volcano tsunami. And what's left is that it's now only about a quarter of its pre-eruption size. The explosion that took place December 22nd caused a tsunami that hit Sumatra and Java, and where more than 420 people lost their lives and 40,000 were displaced. So the Cumbre Vieja, meaning in Spanish old summit, is an active, although dormant, volcano ridge on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands, and they belong to Spain. They erupted twice, we said 1949 and again 1971. The ridge of Cumbre Vieja trends in an approximate north-south direction, covering the southern two-thirds of the island. Several volcanic craters are located on the summit ridge and flanks. And of course, the villages, the residents are right on the coast of the island, adjacent to the sea. La Palma is a volcanic ocean island. It's on the African plate, currently, along with Tenerife, one of the most volcanically active on the Canary Islands. Eruptions there occurred in 1470, 1585, 1646, 1677, 1712, 1949, and 1971. So we see that they're quite frequent. And all subaerial eruptive activity has been associated with the Cumbre Vieja, eruptions ranging on the whole over 25 kilometers long ridge. It's known from submarine surveys to continue south of Punta de Fuencaliente, the point of the hot fountain, and volcanic activity connected with the submarine extension of this has not been observed or recorded. But, it's under the sea as well. The volcanic explosivity index, the eruption style range from effusive, mildly explosive vents to mildly explosive at the Hoyo Negro vent that was strombolian in style, and it's therefore classified as having volcanic explosivity index of 1 or 2. MEGA-TSUNAMI, 1999 indicated that the Cumbre Vieja may be in the stages of failure, and authors of these papers also claimed that the geological development of La Palma underwent changes due to the southern migration of the hotspot and the collapse of the earlier volcano. Subsequent to this, a triple-arm rift system evolved, and the eventual closing down of the volcanic activity associated with 2 of the arms, and the reason can only be hypothesized. This caused the southern arm, the Cumbre Vieja, to be the sole source of the volcanic activity, and as a result, they postulate the western flank may be ready for failure. They postulate the western flank, that is, the flank that is facing the Atlantic Ocean and facing, of course, across the Atlantic Ocean, the United States, may be in the initial stages of failure. That is, it's going to slough off and drop into the ocean. In October 2000, the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, transmitted a horizon program called MEGA-TSUNAMI, Wave of Destruction, and it suggested that a future failure of the western flank of the Kumbre Vieja would cause a mega-tsunami. And that's what we're talking about here. BBC transmitted a follow-up program called Could We Survive a Mega-Tsunami? So the BBC transmitted a follow-up program called Could We Survive a Mega-Tsunami? Program presented in breaking news reporting style. It claimed that the western flank of the Cumbre Vieja had collapsed and that the initial wave had an amplitude of about 1,000 meters. The program used computer-generated graphics to present a storyline based on this hypothesis. The program interviewed several scientific personnel attempting to give credence to the story, which, according to one of the scientists involved, quote, "This is a true story, only it has not happened yet," end quote. So, hypothesizing during eruption at some unascertained future date, western half of the Cumbre Vieja, approximately 500 cubic kilometers, with an estimated mass of 1.5 million metric tons, will catastrophically fall into a massive gravitational landslide, entering the Atlantic Ocean, generating the so-called mega-tsunami. Debris will continue to travel along the ocean floor as debris flow, and computerized modeling indicates that the resulting initial wave may attain local amplitude, a height of over 2,000 feet. Okay, 600 meters, 2,000 feet, and the initial peak-to-peak height that approximates 1 mile, and traveling at about 450 miles an hour, approximately the speed of a jet aircraft, inundating the African coast in about an hour, the southern coastlines of the British Islands in about 3.5 hours, the eastern seaboard of North America in only 6 hours, by which time the initial wave will have subsided into the succession of smaller ones, each about 100 feet coming in to 200 feet in height. These may surge to several hundred meters in height, be several kilometers apart. The models of Day et al. And Word and Day suggest that the event could inundate up to 16 miles inland. So you can understand this is a frightening scenario. This is exactly what would take place if this happens. 16 miles inland. If the model is correct, then the scale of the inundation will greatly damage or destroy cities all along the entire North American eastern seaboard. This would, of course, include the big cities, Boston, New York, Miami, etc. Many other cities near the Atlantic coast. So this ending of the scientific findings I read from Wikipedia for you for the Cumbre Vieja volcano and historic mega-tsunamis are expected to take place. On July 9th, 1958, the 7.9 magnitude earthquake and landslide released rock and debris in the Krillin Inlet, the head of Lituya Bay, Alaska. The mass impacted the water with a force generated a massive plume and surge, which has since become known as the Lituya Bay MEGA-TSUNAMI. Estimated initial height of about, you won't believe this, but it was 980 feet. The tsunami was about 1,000 feet high. As the water collapsed, it generated a wave, which then surged into the headland opposite, rising to the height of approximately 1,710 feet. It was almost twice as high. It stripped trees and soil from the headland as it flowed over the land. As it flowed away from its origin, inundated the entire bay, destroying fishing boats, damaging a third of houses and boats that were anchored, and were anchored. Of course, two people lost their lives. According to eyewitness accounts, the wave, as it approached their fishing boat, had an amplitude of about 100 feet. And once the wave reached the open sea, it rapidly dissipated. And then again, on October 9th, 1963, a mass of rock, soil, and other debris slid in the massive landslide off Monte Toc, infilling the new constructed Vajon Dam in Italy, and it displaced about 1/5 of the water present in the reservoir, surging over the dam wall and flooding the Piave Valley below the dam. From the onset of the landslide to impact the opposite side of the gorge took an estimated only 45 seconds, according to seismic records. And by the definition of a tsunami, displaced surge was not a tsunami, but rather massive displacement of water resulting in the surge. It does serve to indicate, however, just like the Lituya Bay, massive volume of debris can displace water. So the conclusion is that the western flank of the La Palma Island volcano is ready to slough off and fall into the sea, and when that does, it's going to create a huge mega tsunami that in 6 hours will reach the coast of North America and of course Latin America, as you can see from this map. I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.